Bowman live. Starting to have a conversation on today, and I'm going to be talking about the global distribution of wealth and wealth inequality. And I think it's important to know that the world is full of a lot of extremely wealthy people. The only reason why poverty exists in the world is because those who are in power appear to make a lot of money from people that are poor. So if you eliminate poverty and everybody becomes wealthy, then there is no political conversation to be had because everyone would be on a even playing field. Now, I'll be citing different sources, but to start this conversation, global wealth reached an estimated 450 to 535 trillion dollars, with significant concentration at the top. The richest 1% of adults hold roughly 45 to 48% of global wealth, and the bottom 50% own only about 1% to 2%. Despite 2022 seeing a rare decline, global personal wealth grew by 4.6% in 2024, with Switzerland leading in an average wealth per adult. So, when we talk about global wealth distribution and inequality and the elite, approximately 1.6% of adults, which is about 60 million people, hold nearly 48% of the world's wealth with net worths exceeding $1 million. And when it comes to the top 10%, the top 10% of adults own 76 to 82% of global wealth. About 3.1 billion adults, which is about 82% of the population, hold only 12.7% of total wealth. So is there a wealth gap? Yes, there is a wealth gap. The pandemic exacerbated inequalities, with the top 1% owning more than 95% of humanity in terms of wealth gains in some periods. Do you know during the pandemic era, wealthy people got wealthier? Remember when stimulus checks were given out to people on several occasions? Let me tell you the reason why the stimulus checks were given. The key word is stimulus. The economy had to be saved. The economy had to be revived. The economy was faltering. And as a result of a sagging, faltering economy during the pandemic, it became necessary to put money into the hands of consumers for one purpose: for them to spend it, not to save it. Because when you spend it, the GPD, or the gross national product, increases. And who profits from the spending? The corporations, the manufacturers. The consumers get goods. And it's important to understand why wealth is important. Wealth is not made to be stingily hoarded and kept someplace in a bank or in accounts overseas. It's made to use for purposes of good. Some may agree, some may disagree. This may get a lot of likes, it may not get a lot of likes, but the conversation still must be had. I'm just getting started on this topic, so I'm going to take my time and I'm going to be here for a minute because I'm going to talk about it. You know, why do rich people want to stay rich? Because they feel as though that their money allows them to not just have a certain lifestyle that they desire to have, but it causes them to have power, leverage, prestige. It opens doors for them simply because they're wealthy. You know, when people tell me, oh, I associate with people, they don't associate with the poorest of the poor. They only want to be around the wealthiest of the wealthy. Everybody, including myself, wants to have a better life for themselves and for their families. Nobody wants to live in poverty. No one wants to be without. No one wants to barely make it from day to day and not be able to take care of themselves. That's a misnomer. Everybody wants to be able to have a decent standard of living. So check this out. The US accounts for nearly 40% of global millionaires. You've heard the term tech millionaire, digital millionaire, AI millionaire. These are computer programmers who work behind the scenes. And they become very wealthy from the work that they do. Silicon Valley is one of the richest places in California. That's where the ingenuity, the creativity, starting with Steve Jobs and so many others, Bill Gates and etc., that's where they came from. Young college boys who probably couldn't get a date because they looked like geeks and the girls didn't want to be bothered with them. But now that they're billionaires, all of a sudden they become more attractive. No, sweetie, they're not attractive looking. You are attracted to their money. That's all. It's not the person. It's the assets. It's the power. It's the money. Let's talk about the top countries and the average wealth per adult. According to 2025, Switzerland, 687,166 people are extremely wealthy in Switzerland. In America, 620,654. In Hong Kong, 601,195. And Luxembourg, 566,733. Wait a minute, did I read that right? No, I'm sorry. My bad. Let me go back. Let me correct myself. The average wealth per adult in Switzerland, they are making, if they're wealthy, $687,166 constantly. In the US, the average wealthy person is making $620,654. In Hong Kong, the average wealthy person is making $601,195. And Luxembourg, the average person that is wealthy is making $566,735. The total global wealth is expected to rise by 39% over the next 5 years. And the greatest wealth components that will contribute to that wealth are stocks, bonds, and cash, which saw the most validity in 2022. And the non-financial assets consist of real estate, which has shown resilience, contributing strongly to households' wealth, even as interest rates rise. I mean, if you own land, you have money. Repeat that one more time. If you own a significant amount of earth, land, you have a lot of money at your disposal. You can even get signature credit if you are a wealthy landowner. That's right, signature credit. You heard what I'm saying. Signature credit is when you just walk in and you just sign your name. You don't fill out any paperwork, no applications, or anything. So what is the cause of debt that contributes to poverty? A major factor in net worth calculations, with high debts in advanced economies offsetting high asset values. Now let's get down to some sources here and find out what's going on. Now, according to Wikipedia, let's deal with what is the definition of wealth. Wealth of an individual is defined as net worth expressed as wealth equals assets equals liabilities. Let me say that again. Wealth equals debts minus liabilities. So you have wealth equals assets minus liabilities. A lot of wealthy people, on paper, they may say they're worth let's say $2 billion. That's their approximate total wealth. They're not going to go in a bank and get that kind of money. So what did they do? Signature credit. They have access to that type of capital. A broader definition of wealth, according to Wikipedia, which is rarely used in the measurement of wealth inequality, also includes human capital. For example, the United Nations definition of inclusive wealth is a monetary measure which includes the sum of natural, human, and physical assets. Now, let me say this. You can be in the days of the early part of America, and I'm just using this as a reference point. I'm not getting stuck here. If you had a lot of slaves, you were considered to be a wealthy individual. And that is true. Whether people wanted to believe it or not, black people were traded and sold on the open market as things. And that's why it contributed to a substantial amount of a slave owner's wealth. Also, if you are a landowner, the more land you have, the more your wealth increases. That's why they call it real estate. Really, it's just owning land. Some people will walk through a dilapidated neighborhood and they just see blight. An entrepreneur, a real estate developer, they see it from an entirely different perspective. What do they see? They see a metropolis. They see the ability to take something that appears to be nothing and make it beautiful, quote unquote, again. That's why people have to have vision and insight, because wealth is not just confined to how much money you have. You can be a millionaire and make $1 million, but do you really have $1 million? So, and physical assets, depending upon what you own. Like if you buy a brand new car, as soon as you drive it off the lot, it depreciates. It's not even worth the money that you paid for. And sometimes if you have a vintage car, the vintage cars are worth more than brand new cars, because a vintage car, these vintage cars are cars that you can't buy on the open market. They're one of a kind. And they're good to have. I think Jay Leno has a huge collection of vintage cars. Most people want something brand new that's digitalized and things of that nature. For me, I'll take an old car, modernize it from within, have everything in it, but I want the frame to remain the same on the outside because they're made from pure cast iron. And if you run into that joker, your little plastic car is going to fall apart. The relationship between wealth, income, and expenses is a change of wealth equals savings equals income minus consumption or expenses. If an individual has a large income but also large expenses, the net effect of that income on her or his wealth could be small or even negative. Oftentimes people wonder, how do a lot of millionaires and billionaires go broke? Because they overextend themselves. They end up becoming impoverished because they go to the extremes. Everything has to be bought at a high price. Instead of them being, in some instances, frugal with their money, and instead of them just living off the interest, they'll go out and pay $100 to $300 million for a yacht. Are you serious? If you got that kind of money, that's wonderful. But the average person can't afford that kind of money. Quote, a woman says, quote, I'm black. I'm a black woman who don't believe in Jesus. Well, Crystal, that's your prerogative. I mean, I'm not going to be upset because you don't believe in Jesus. Okay. Now, there are many ways in which the distribution of wealth can be analyzed. One common used example is to compare the amount of the wealth of individuals at, say, 99th percentile relative to the wealth of the median or 50th percentile. This is per 99/per 50 is one of the potential Kuznets ratios, which is the inverted U shape that indicates the relationship between the inequality and the income per capita. Another common measure is the ratio of total amount of wealth in the hand of the top, say, 101% of the wealth distribution over the total wealth in the economy in many societies. The richest 10% control more than half of the total wealth. The Pareto distribution has often been used to mathematically quantify the distribution of wealth at the right tail, or the wealth of the very rich, stating that the upper 20% owns 80%, the upper 4% owns 64%, the upper 0.8% owns 51.2%, etc. In the fact, the tail of wealth distribution, similar to that of income distribution, I'm going to break it all down in a minute, behaves like a Pareto distribution, but with a thicker tail. Look at it like this. When people invest money, let's say in the stock market goes up, the stock market goes down. Why do they call it stock? Because they're buying and trading different things on the open market. The richest 1% are wealthy because they know how to invest their money. They don't foolishly run around. The late Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart, when he was alive, was considered to be the richest man in America, yet he drove an old beat-up truck. Most people didn't even know he was worth $9.5 billion because he never displayed that type of persona. A lot of people, as soon as they get a lot of money, especially athletes, what's the first thing they do? They go and get a bunch of jewelry. They go and get a great big house that they don't even pay for. They take out a huge mortgage on it, a great big mansion, and they're the only ones in it. That is causing their wealth to depreciate. And people keep forgetting. They may make, let's say, $150 million a year for some, but out of that, you pay your agents, you pay your manager, you got to pay your taxes, the state taxes that you live in. This is real. So buy a normal house. You can buy a nice house for $600,000 to $800,000 and live comfortably. Have everything in it that you need. Instead of trying to prove to everybody you have arrived. So wealth over people, or WOP. Curves are a visually compelling way to show the distribution of wealth in a nation. WOP curves are modified distribution of wealth curves. The vertical and horizontal scales each show percentages from 0 to 100. We imagine all the households in the nation being sorted from rich to poorest. They are then shrunk down, lined up, richest at the left along the horizontal scale. For any particular household, its point on the curve represents how their wealth compares as a proportion to the average wealth of the richest percentile. For any nation, the average wealth of the richest, one out of 100 households, is the topmost point on the curve. People with the 100% wealth, or the 100%, or P equals 1, W equals 100, or 1,000. In the real world, 2 points of the WOP curve are always known before any statistics are gathered. These are the topmost points. So it's important to understand why wealth is where it is. So let's talk about theoretical approaches to wealth. To model aspects of the distribution and holdings of wealth, there have been many different types of theories used before. Before the 1950s, the data regarding this was collected mostly from wealth tax and estate tax records. In the colonial days, the kings taxed the people heavily. Taxation without representation. And they took that money and put it in the king's treasury. And the king would remain rich. So the data regarding this was collected mostly from wealth tax and estate tax, with further proof gathered from small, unrepresentative examinations and a variety of other sources. The results from these sources tended to show that the distribution of wealth was very unequal and that material inheritance had a big role in the matter of wealth differences and in the transmission of the status of wealth from generation to generation. Let me ask you a question. Do you think people who are the inheritors of wealth actually know what to do with it when they get it, especially when they're young? Or are they going to take that wealth and use it in a way that it gains more wealth, and they could take the interest from the wealth that they gain and do great things to help out those that are quote unquote less fortunate? Why am I having this conversation? Because we need to understand that the world is not poor. The world is not filled with blight. All the world is not filled with hopelessness, poverty. That's what the news media will project. That's what they want you to see, because they don't want you to concentrate on the fact that the richest parts of the world are where people who are rich want to be. Even in America. The reason why you keep hearing about the guns of war, because the profiteers and the manufacturers are going to make a ton of money from wars. How, Tyrone? Easy. You have to make the artillery that you're going to use. That's one company. You got to make the bullets. That's another company. You got to make the shields that they're going to use. That's another company. And it goes on and on and on. The investors, just like prison privatization. You'd be surprised how much money is garnered from the industrial prison complex. I think I'll do that video next. It is a staggering amount of money that the profiteers are making from having people locked up. Right now, concentration centers are being built around the country because the majority of these people, they're never going to be deported. They're going to put them in these concentration centers, similar to what Hitler did when he was alive. The playbook that you're seeing being unfolded before you, ladies and gentlemen, it is nothing new. This playbook has been used time and time and time again. The Japanese were interned in concentration camps in America. About maybe over 2,000 videos ago, I talked about the internment of Japanese people and how America paid them reparations. That's a historical fact. Whether folk want to accept it or not, whether they want to believe it or not, just because people don't believe something doesn't mean that it didn't happen. And because you believe something doesn't mean that it's real. The term fake news was coined in order to deter people from paying attention to what's really going on. That's why I call it lying news. Fake news is lying news. That's all fake news is. It's lying news being told by the liars because they don't want you to decipher, to discern, and understand the truth and the reality of what's happening. And the reality is politicians are profiting more right now than they did under the Obama administration, and they're getting richer and richer and richer off the misery of people because they keep keeping people's focus down in Minneapolis and other parts of the country while they're making millions of dollars. Right now, they're laughing at people like it's nobody's business. That's why I'm having this conversation, to hip you to the game, to let you know what's really going on. Don't be fooled into thinking that everybody's broke, everybody's poor. That is not true. So there was no reason to believe that the inequality in wealth was shrinking over time. And also the distribution shape demonstrated particular statistical regularities that could not have been caused by coincidence. Thus, early theoretical work on the distribution of wealth wanted to explain these statistical regularities. So more lately, the research about wealth distribution has moved away from the worry with overall distribution characteristics, and in its place, focuses more on the grounds of individual differences in the holdings of wealth. That's the key, holdings. This change was caused partly because the importance of saving for retirement increased, and it is reflected in the vital role now assigned to the model of life cycle saving developed by Modigallen and Bromberg in 1954, and Ando and Modigalina in 1963. Another important progress has been the increase in availability and finesse in sets of microdata, which offer not just estimations of individuals' assets, holdings, and savings, but also a variety. I'm going to talk about wealth inequality in a minute. Do you really think that wealthy people, if they weren't getting wealthy, they would allow themselves to be in the position that they're in? When wealthy people go into business, they are going into business to make money. That's the bottom line. When you hear celebrities talking about they got a label or they have a signature brand, they don't have anything. They don't own anything. They are contractually in business with the manufacturer and the owner of the corporation, like Ciroc. When he was out here, doing this thing, he was part of a business venture. Bad Boy Records that he was the founder was in conjunction with his business partners. He might have been out front, but they had all the power. And who profited more? He did, because the artists were certainly not profiting. They weren't profiting that greatly. If you have an idea and you know your idea is good, take your idea, get it patented, find good, decent, honest investors to partner with, start your corporation, and then you will be on the road to becoming wealthy. For me, God gave me the ability to articulate, to speak. He put a voice inside of me where I could communicate to men and women. I'm a thinker. My job and responsibility is to educate, inform. I could easily become a spokesperson for any brand if they hired me, and I would take that money and I would invest it wisely. I can articulate anything like anybody else. That's why on this channel, I am an independent thinker. That's why this channel is never going to be monetized. I don't care what you all think in the comment section. You can write whatever you want. That's why I don't censor you. It's called free speech. Never forget that. It's called freedom of speech. I'm not afraid of the comments, negative, pro, or con. As I've said before, I don't dislike Donald Trump. I just don't like his policies. That's all. That's why I don't silence MAGA Trump supporters on this channel. I allow you to come on here to express your thoughts, pro or con. When you type in Trump 2028, okay, it's flashing across the screen. I don't have a problem with that. Each and every person has to find out who they are and work with it. Find your path. Find your purpose. Instead of complaining and begrudging what somebody else has, why don't you take all that same negative energy and start putting it towards something positive and make it work for you? I want to talk about wealth inequality for a minute. Wealth inequality refers to uneven distribution of wealth among individuals and entities. I'll say this regarding myself: nobody owes me nothing. I am not a proponent for reparations for me. I could care less. You're shocked to hear that coming from a black man, aren't you? I could care less about reparations. It means nothing to me. I can get what I need on my own. I don't need nobody to give me something for nothing. That's a misnomer. I know a lot of people, if they had taken the monies that they had when they had it, they wouldn't be so broke right now, but they did dumb stuff with the monies. I watched them. I'm like, you're real one idiot. You're gonna take what little you have and you're gonna go buy a Beyonce ticket with it, knowing your rent has got to be paid, your gas and your electric. Or you want to go see Beyonce. Some of the dumb stuff that people do with money is what keeps them in poverty. It's not that they don't have it, it's what they do with it when they get it. Although most research depends on written sources, archaeologists, anthropologists often view large households as occupied by wealthy households. That's not true. I know a lot of people have large households and they're poor, but they're multi-talented. They're multi-gifted. They could do so much with it if they didn't spend their time just whining and complaining all the time. Like if you go on TikTok and Instagram, people are always complaining. That's all they do. Complain, complain, complain. But they never have a solution to the problem. They never tell you how to get the problem solved. They just show you something for reaction. So the distribution of contemporaneous house sizes in a society, perhaps analyzed using the Gini coefficient, that can be regarded as a measure of wealth inequality. All right, enough of that one. Let me show you something here. This is from inequality.org. No, I don't want to subscribe. I just want the information. All right. Wealth inequality has been on the rise across the globe for several decades. Some countries have reduced the number of people living in extreme poverty, but economic gaps have continued to do what? To grow as the very richest amass unprecedented levels of wealth. Among industrial nations, the United States is by far the most top-heavy, with much greater shares of national wealth and income going to the richest 1% than any other country. That's one reason why Donald Trump is in office, to protect the interests of the rich. 1%, that is. Give them every tax incentive, every tax break under the sun. Tax shelters. Tax shelters is nothing more than your CPA showing you how to hide your money. And there are a lot of billionaires in the Democratic Party as well. You know, but they don't like to point it out. Why not? You've got millionaires and billionaires in the Democratic Party who are benefiting from the policies. It's more profitable sometimes for people to just complain, complain, and complain instead of finding a solution. If you hang around complaining people, you will become a complainer. Hang around nasty people and you will become nasty. Don't matter how nice you are, you will change after a while. Associate your mind with wealthy people and eventually you will catch on. And you'll figure it out for yourself. Just from being associated. People are like, oh, dog, oh, player, I ain't got no time for all that. That's why you're in the situation that you're in. So compared to other countries, the U.S. saw the largest expansion of its billionaire class in 2025, according to the UBS Billionaire Ambitious Report. By the Switzerland-based investment bank count, the number of American billionaires rose from 835 in 2024 to 924 in 2025. How did they do it? By having a president on their side. That's how they did it. The U.S. is now home to nearly a third, or 31.7% of the global billionaire population. According to the USB Global Wealth Report in 2023, The world's richest 1%, those with more than 1 million, owned 47.5% of the world's wealth, equivalent to roughly $212 trillion. Adults with less than $10,000 make up nearly 4% of the world's population, but hold less than 1% of the world's wealth. And I'll tell you something that's a fact, ladies and gentlemen. Rich people don't spend money the way poor people do. They're not going to spend $5,000 for a pair of sneakers. That's why they're rich. They're not going to rush and go to a store and buy everything when it first comes out. They'll wait until it goes on sale, almost down to nothing. People who don't have money are always the people who want to spend it and spend it and spend it, to the point where they recklessly endanger themselves and their family members. I see it happen every day. Look, I'm a black man in America. Don't play with me. Don't play with me in the comment section. I grew up in the hood, baby. But the hood ain't in me. Some of you, not only did you grow up in the hood, but you won't get rid of your hoodish ways, and you can go no further than the hood. Because where you need to go with your talents and with your gifts and with your abilities, you won't let anybody talk to you because you don't want to hear it. I'll tell you another business that's flourishing. And I did a report on that a while ago. The weed business. Oh, excuse me, they call it cannabis. It ain't nothing but weed. That's all it is. The weed business is booming, popping up all over the place. You got weed centers everywhere. You get yourself a weed card. They call it medical marijuana. It ain't nothing but a weed card. You go to the weed dispensaries, the weed stores, the drug stores, ain't nothing but a place you go and buy your drugs. Cannabis is a fancy name. They're nothing but drugs. Things that got people locked up for during the Nixon administration, during the Clinton administration. He's the one who gave people the 3 strike laws. Bill Clinton, the dude who they said was supposed to be America's first black president. Why? Because he could play a saxophone? Because he had some swag? He gave you the 3 strikes law. Biden wrote the law as a senator. Oh, come on. I don't give people a pass for screwing up people's lives when they did it. So the weed business is profitable because the government can make money off of it. If they couldn't make money off of it, it wouldn't be profitable. Gambling became legalized because the government makes a ton of money off of the gambling industry through taxes. Why do you think they build the gambling casinos the way they do? The bright lights, the entertainment, the sexy looking women and men to lure you in to gamble. Leonard Toast, who was the original owner of the Philadelphia Eagles, lost ownership because he had his mind more on gambling instead of taking care of the business of the Eagles. And he had to eventually sell it to Jeffrey Lurie. And Jeffrey Lurie was in the Nutra-Care system business and bought the Eagles and turned it into a profitable making venture. How do I know this? Because I studied. That's how I know it. Toast spent all his time down the casinos. Then he wanted to blame it on the fact that they kept bringing him more drinks and more drinks. You didn't have to drink it because they brought it to you. Nobody can make me do anything that I don't want to do because I have my own free, independent thinking will. You can amass wealth during your lifetime if you put your mind to it. So as I was saying, the weed business is profitable, aka cannabis. It will continue to be that way because now they want to cut out the street people, vendors, the street pharmacist, quote unquote, aka drug dealers. They still want to lock them up. But the wealthy people who own the cannabis countries, they selling all the weeds and the drugs, and they're considered to be an entrepreneurial genius. Why do you think the pharmaceutical industry is so profitable? Because the money is in the drugs, not the cure. That's a fact. Adults with less than $10,000 make up nearly 40% of the world's population. This stuff is real, y'all. So the wealthiest 0.1%, a group represented around 56,000 millionaires, now hold 3 times more wealth than the bottom half of the world population. Their share has grown steadily from 3.7% in 1995 to 6.1% in 2025, according to the 2026 World Inequality Report. Whatever. Ultra high net worth individuals, or the wealth management industry's term for people worth more than $30 million, hold an astounding disproportionate share of global wealth. These wealth owners held 16.5% of total global wealth, yet represent only a tiny fraction, or 0.003%, of the world's population, based on Institute for Policy Studies Analysis, of Capgemini and Credit Suisse Wealth Data, and the UN Population Fund population estimates. Wow. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever seen the infomercials, when they show you Africa? What do they show you? Black, poor, hungry, starving children. You know what they show you? Black people who are living in mud huts. But let me tell you what they don't show you. They will never show you the richest, most industrious parts of Africa. Why? Because they don't want you to know that you got more black billionaires and millionaires in Africa than any other place in the world. And the reason why they keep going over to Africa is for Africa's natural resources, to continue to keep the rich supplied with everything that they need. Why is China heavily investing in Africa? Because it suits their purpose. And other nations are constantly going over there as well. Don't be beguiled, ladies and gentlemen. Don't be fooled. Our people, especially in Africa, have the propensity and the ability to do like any other people. Quote unquote, somebody says, stop talking about black people. I'm going to talk about my people as much as I want to. You don't tell me what to talk about. You out of your damn mind. I'm going to talk about my people in a way that my people can understand. Stop wasting their time. Stop killing each other. Stop throwing your gifts and your talents and abilities away. Utilize what you have to make life better for yourself and for your children and for your families. You don't know what I do off camera because you're not with me. I love my people enough to tell them the truth instead of lying to them through fairy tales. I love my people to put my foot in their behind when they're not doing right so they don't end up destroying themselves. I love my people enough to let them know that you need to associate with other successful black people so you can become one as well. There's no retirement fund from being locked up in prison. There's no 401k account. There's no credit cards. Some of the most talented, gifted people that I've ever met are doing life in prison. And if they could turn back the hand of time, quote, close quote, as they said, Bowman, I do things differently. I think differently. I'd make better decisions. I'd make better choices. So don't tell me about how to talk to my people. If you don't like what I'm saying, go over to the white channel and you can hear whatever white folks say. But over here, let me do what I want to do. And that's the bottom line, because Tyrone said so. There's another point I want to make before I leave. Do you know a lot of millionaires go broke too? Yeah. A lot of millionaires actually go broke. People wouldn't believe it, but it's true. And how did they go broke? From making bad decisions and bad investments. From making bad decisions and making bad investments. That's how a lot of wealthy people have lost everything they have. Because they overextended themselves, they kept giving all their family members, every time they wanted something, they kept giving it to them. They didn't deal with accounts payable, accounts receivable. They didn't invest enough of their money, of their wealth, and set it aside for hard times. Just like everybody should have an emergency fund in their home. Because emergencies always come up. They do. I said emergencies always come up, whether people want to believe it or not. And the information that I discussed with you today, you can go right online and get it just like I did. Just go to wikipedia.com. You can pull it right up. Because I want individuals to know that we all have the same ability, the same mindset, the same mind to be able to use what we have and turn it into a profit-making entity. An example, the person that invented the hula hoop, you know how much money they made? Billionaires. The person who invented the slinky, billionaires. The person who invented Rubik's Cube, a billionaire. The person who invented the bat, who invented the football, the basketball, the baseball, millionaires. Simple things can make people wealthy. But most people don't see the value in taking what they have and making it work for them. But you can. You can make it work to the degree that you can read what others did and you can do it as well. That's why I recommend a lot of different books on this channel for people to read. Like there's one called Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice. Check it out. Read it for yourself. John H. Johnson, Succeeding Against the Odds, the founder of Ebony and Jet Magazines, the Johnson Publishing Company. Earl G. Graves, the late Earl G. Graves, the founder of Black Enterprise magazine. His sons now run the company because their father, when he was alive, he made sure that he sent his sons to the best schools to get the best knowledge so they could come back and run the company when the dad's time was up. So wealth distribution and wealth inequality are real. So getting back to billionaires, a lot of billionaires, they give to so many different causes until they forget one thing. Take care of yourself first. And then you take care of everybody else second. You can't give what you don't have. Repeat that again. You can't give what you don't have. But you can put yourself in a position. Some of the greatest minds I know right now, they would just go ahead and use what God gave them. They'll be surprised where they can be in 2 or 3 years. I know a young brother right now that's investing in real estate like nobody's business, and he's on the road to becoming a millionaire plus, and he's going to do it. Him and I had a conversation over this past, I think it was Friday, we sat down to talk. Let me talk to a lot of you independent barbers out there. You got barbershops and stuff. Why don't you take your barbershops and turn it into a corporation instead of just cutting hair? Turn it into a profitable making business, you know? So when you do that, then you have something for life that you pass from one generation to another. The choice is yours. The choice is mine. I know what I'm doing. Oh, I'm working my plan, and it's working. It's going to continue to work. Pretty soon I'll have my law degree, and I'm going to put that to work. All right, that's all the time I have here about global wealth distribution and wealth inequality. So it's a reality. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be back in about another hour. Until then, never surrender, never quit.